The sports handicappers are way off on the win total for the Duke Blue Devils this year. That's a team that's going to turn some heads.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On this episode, we will examine Dabo Swinney's prediction that Clemson, team he coaches, is going to become the first ever 16-0 team in the history of college football. We'll talk about the high-profile Week 1 matchups involving ACC teams and how the conference is going to fare against some of the elites around the country. But we have some takes. Our guest today has some takes. You know him, you love him. He's Brian Smith, host of The Portal and host of Locked On Seminoles. And Brian, you were looking through the win totals, the FanDuel win totals for ACC football teams this year. And I know the first one that grabs your attention is the Duke Blue Devils. What's going on there?
I saw 6.5, and I thought, okay, they just went and spent a bunch of money on a really quality quarterback. They're really good in the trenches. Their head coach has proven that he can get it done. And 6.5 ACC schedule, I'm not so sure that's the right number. I think they're going to win 8, maybe 9. Like, their schedule is not, like, sitting here looking at it, especially outside of at Clemson. That's the one game I don't feel real good about that. There's no game on here that I'm concerned. Illinois is at home. That's tough. Tulane's on the road. Of course, they stole their quarterback, but NC State, Syracuse is not the same team they were last year. Cal, I know it's a road trip, but Cal's not that great. This is a team, if they won 9 games, it would not shock me. And I know Vegas doesn't miss a lot. Let's be very, very honest. They're very good at this. But why is it 6.5? Trench is good quarterback, good head coach usually means you have a successful season. Any level. 6.5? I'm not buying that. I think that it's over, and I'm not a betting guy by all means. I'm not. But if I was, that would be the first bet I would make in college football this year is the over for Duke.
Especially, they won 9 games last year. So
right.
I'm with you. Like, what are we missing here? I could understand if they had the same team they have right now, but they're coming off a 6-win season. Like, then sure. I get it. Like, they need to see it to believe it. But we just saw them go 2.5 wins over 6.5 a year ago. So I'm with you on the Blue Devils. You know, I've been looking at these over-unders. I think the one for Miami has actually gone up because I remember seeing it months ago at 8.5. I'm looking at 9.5
yeah,
now.
I think it was at one point.
I think it was at 8.5, which is interesting. I guess maybe, you know, the bettors have heard that Carson Beck is healthy. Because I don't know why else they would jump up that much, Brian. I guess people maybe had their concerns about Beck's throwing arm, but he's been out there practicing with 0 restrictions.
Miami's a really interesting team because they've got so much talent, arguably the best right tackle in college football. Obviously, the Beck situation coming off the injury last year when he was at UGA. Is the secondary ready to take a step forward? It can't go any further back. They got a bunch of transfers there and a couple guys like O.J. Frederick coming back. Then they got those young receivers. They got a lot of talent and a couple of key transfers. Lots to talk about with the Hurricanes. 9.5, I think, is about the right number. Like 8.5, if again, not a gambler. If I did, I'd have went over.
Yeah.
But at 9.5, it's you're splitting hairs. I don't think there's much value in picking one way or the other for Miami there, you know, but if they went 10-2, it still wouldn't surprise me. They have as talented a team as there is in the league, Clemson included, top to bottom. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And again, they got more transfers than some other schools and all that, but sometimes that hits. So Miami's really intriguing.
I think if Miami's going to go over 9.5, which would be 10 wins or more, they're going to have to at least split the Notre Dame, Florida non-conference games.
Possibly,
if they lose both of those, then you're
That's hard.
talked about needing to run the table in the ACC schedule, something Miami has never done before, running the table in your 8 conference games. So, there's probably going to be a banana peel that gets slipped on somewhere. So if the Hurricanes do split those Notre Dame and Florida games, they would be on track for a probable 10-win plus season. But anything short of that, it would be extremely difficult. Yeah.
That game at SMU on November 1st is the one I got circled from Miami. That's if you're thinking about the 9.5, that's the game you got to figure out. SMU fan base, they're into it. They got a really good coach. Ironically, somebody coached at Miami, Brett Lashley, good football coach. They got their quarterback, Kevin Jennings, back. That's SMU's a team that I don't know what to think. They got killed at Penn State. I mean, they got murdered.
Right.
But they still played really competitive with Clemson in the ACC title game. They were pretty good last year, especially down the stretch. That's another interesting team. I don't think I'd want to touch them, but Miami's got to play there, and they've also got to finish the year at Virginia Tech and at Pittsburgh. The weather in those games for a South Florida team is iffy. You're right. They have to win at least one of the Notre Dame and Florida games to win 10.
When you mentioned, SMU, a difficult one to handicap. They're at 8.5 wins. Them and Louisville are at 8.5 over under. With Louisville, I think I feel pretty good about the over for them, but not by much. Like I look at Louisville and I say that team has 9 wins written all over it, which doesn't give me a whole lot of room for error if the number is 8.5. But my gut tells me they're probably going to go over. With SMU, I have no idea, because Brian, the big thing there is they were able to sneak up on everybody last year. Being their first year in the Power Four. I'm not trying to take away from what they accomplished, but they also had an easier schedule last season than they do on paper this year. I just think it's going to be hard for them to do that again, what they did last year.
When you're the hunted instead of the hunter, it's a different animal in terms of how you prepare, what teams think of you, the ability to get coverage, teams circling you on that schedule, the media hype gets going. That's a different deal. We'll see what Kevin Jennings does at SMU, and like Louisville's kind of in that yearly now. Like everybody's at least aware of them because they were in the ACC title game a couple of years ago. So those are a couple of those teams. Georgia Tech, I don't think it's going to sneak up on anybody this year either. No. Their offensive line, they do a really good job with what they get talent wise. And Haynes King is back for his 29th year of eligibility. So it just seems like he's been in college football forever.
For sure.
Yeah, he's such a good player, and I respect him. But like, my God, is the guy ever going to be out of college? Yeah. The ACC beyond Clemson, 2 through 6.
Oh, yeah.
Alex, you could convince me that Miami's finishing 2nd or 6th. I wouldn't argue with you either way. Same with Louisville, same with SMU, same with Georgia Tech, any of that. And then Florida State is the other one we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah. They are a complete conundrum to me to try to figure out. So the ACC is really iffy. The only one, again, that I'm very, very confident they got wrong is Duke. They're over 6.5.
Well, yeah. So when we come back, I think 2 of the most compelling, and we're looking at the FanDuel.com win totals here heading into the season. You guys can, of course, wager on all of these. You probably want to, think about wagering on Duke to go over 6.5. But I want to talk about Florida State and North Carolina, which to me, 2 of the toughest ones to predict. You want to keep it locked right here. We got Brian Smith from the Portal with us on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. Guys, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Guys, they give me so many insights, Monarch, because I have all my financial information right there on the dashboard. They analyze everything for me, and they made me realize at Monarch how much I was overspending on things like food delivery, dining out, streaming services, and guys, this gives me a plan of attack, and I'd like you to take control of your finances like I did with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen. Make sure for your next listen, you check out the Portal. Brian Smith does an incredible job taking you through all things transfer portal, NIL, recruiting. It's a busy time of year for that. Check out the portal, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, so Brian, a few of the teams you mentioned, Georgia Tech is at 7.5 wins over under. Then also at 7.5, Florida State coming off a 2-10 season. A lot of work revamping the coaching staff under Mike Norvell and revamping the roster. New starting quarterback in Tommy Castellanos, who is like hosting players for sleepovers, a lot of team building going on there. And then North Carolina, whose roster is almost entirely new. And of course, Bill Belichick now at the helm there. I mean, what do you make of Florida State and UNC both at 7.5 over under? Oh, you're muted.
State is a really interesting team because new quarterback, new offensive coordinator. Out of their starters on offense, 11 guys get a start on an offensive unit. 10 will be transfers in some capacity. Wow. Some last year, some this year, but still, that's a lot.
Yeah.
On defense, they got Daryl Jackson back. They got a really good coordinator coming in, but they've got like 6 new coaches, totally different defensive scheme. So trying to predict what they're even going to look like, let alone what they're going to do win-wise, is hard. And then you open with Alabama. So I have 2 main questions. How quickly does the offense assimilate to the new scheme, which is Gus Malzahn? And number 2, if it doesn't go well against Alabama, what does that do to your psyche?
Right.
Alabama is going to bring a whole bunch of NFL players to Tallahassee. I don't anticipate Florida State winning that game. I think Bama will win by about 10. Maybe a little more, but if they open up a can on Florida State, I just wonder how that's going to go psychologically, because you're still installing scheme and all this. That's rough. They got a lot of young players at receiver, so a couple of games to look at. They've got Virginia on the road. I believe that's right before Miami. They've got Virginia Tech at home right towards the end before NC State and Florida on the road. Some of these games that should be close, if they lose those, they may not get past 6 wins, and they may not even get to 6. You don't know. They need something to go right in the Alabama game and something else, maybe somehow upset Miami. I don't see that, but if they could do that, they need something like that to happen to get over 7.5, in my opinion. I think it's going to be hard.
What about North Carolina?
This one is really interesting as well. They lose 7 out of their 8 defensive linemen from last year, but they do have a ton of starts back on the O-line. Those are the first 2 things that I look at when you get like Phil Steele or just doing your own research. Where are you in the trenches? They get Gio Lopez from South Alabama, pretty good quarterback, but he's still a transfer. They lose Hampton to the NFL draft. Do we really think this is going to go well? I'm not so sure. Plus, Duke is up right now. They're probably not going to beat Duke.
Right.
Who are they going to beat, and how's it going to work out for them? A telling sign, they play UCF on the road pretty early in the season. If they lose that game, Alex, it could go off the table, brother, because that UCF's bottom third of the Big 12.
Yeah.
If you're losing to that team, it's probably not going to go very well for you. I need to see it, and I understand Belichick is a Hall of Fame coach. Totally get it. This is college. This is emotion. And you're rebuilding rosters yearly. There's no long-term contracts for 6 years at quarterback like Tom Brady. You don't have those luxuries anymore. No Gronk. What are you going to do when something goes sideways? If I had to go one way or the other, I'd go under on Carolina because I don't trust.
Same.
I don't trust the situation, especially D1. Losing 7 out of 8 of your top production players, Alex, that's rough.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, going back to Florida State, because I want to talk about these 3 marquee games, week 1, that ACC teams are involved in. And, the first of those in chronological order will be Florida State hosting Alabama, 3:30 p.m. on Saturday, August 30th. Now, you mentioned you think Florida State can keep that one probably around 10 points, which I would consider competitive, especially since Alabama is favored by 13 right now. So they're supposed to win that game by 2 touchdowns or more. You talked about kind of the way Florida State can keep it close, but what would be your big concerns where, hey, if Alabama maybe end up opening up a blowout here, what could go wrong for Florida State in this matchup?
Well, I'll go back to what I said earlier. 10 out of their 11 players on offense are transfers, including 4 new offensive line transfers and one that's a holdover. How are they going to gel? They've got a ton of experience, but how are they going to gel? Because Alabama's going to show different fronts. They've got a ton of experience. They got Wilson back at linebacker. He'll be an All-American candidate and a just massive unit. If they are unable to run the ball early, do we really believe Thomas Castellanos is going to sit in the pocket and pick them apart? No. Alabama's got conservatively a top 5 defensive secondary too. If they do not win the battle up front, and beating Alabama's front 7 is not easy. I know Tommy can run around and make plays, but if they struggle up front, the game could get away from them because they're not going to just play from behind throwing the ball. That's not what Tommy does best. He's got to be in manageable situations. Then his arm strength and athleticism will shine. But they do have Deuce Robinson. They got Squirrel White. They've got some really – Javen Boggs has turned heads as a true freshman. They got some talent in Landon Thomas. But do they have time to get it to him? And are they going to be in 3rd and 6 all day? Because if they are, that will not go well.
So, the next big matchup on that Saturday night, you've got another top 10 matchup, a top 10 matchup between Clemson and LSU. Now, Clemson is actually favored, Brian. The only of those 3 ACC teams actually favored to get it done. They're 3.5-point favorites at home against the LSU Tigers. Tiger on Tiger in this one. Do you think Clemson's going to come out on top, or is LSU going to pull off a mild upset?
I think this game will be a classic game. I like Clemson because they're at home, but I also like them because I don't trust LSU's defense. The last 2 years, they have found a way to shoot themselves in the foot over and over and over again in ways that it's just insane. They've got to prove it to me now. Like, their secondary just has too many busts. I trust Clemson schemes. I don't think they'll make as many mental errors. And just being at home, Klubnik's really good. Nussmeier's really good. We've got 2 of the better quarterbacks in college football in that game. So that's great. I'm glad they're playing each other. It makes college football so unique and awesome. But the other thing is Clemson's got a lot of speed at wide receiver. If I'm right about the concerns about the secondary for LSU, there's going to be 1 or 2 plays where they get, Wesco or one of those guys is going to score on a 70-yarder, and that'll be the difference in the game. But it ought to be close, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
I think you nailed that, by the way. Clemson's receivers against LSU's defensive secondary. I think that matchup is going to decide this game, and on paper that plays into Clemson's favor. One of the reasons why they're favored by 3.5 at home. Miami is going to be hosting Notre Dame the following night, 7:30 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium. The Irish are 2.5-point road favorites, coming off a national final appearance. They lost to Ohio State in the title game last year. I talk about this game almost every day on Locked On Canes, and I still don't know what to make of it, Brian. And a lot of that has to do with there being a lot of new pieces on Miami, a completely revamped defense. There's a lot of questions about Notre Dame's quarterback situation. Is it for sure going to be CJ Carr? Is it going to be Minchie? If Carr is making his first career start, can Miami rattle him? Line of scrimmage on both sides is probably going to decide this matchup. What do you make of it?
I think you mentioned most of the things that I would as well. The only additional thing that I'm curious about, Miami's pass catchers against Notre Dame's secondary. I know which one I like that. I like Notre Dame's, but
sure.
The experience factor at quarterback makes you nervous if you're Notre Dame. The quarterback situation for Miami, obviously very experienced. Well, it can't be more battle tested. Is he ready to get rocked and get back up after he got hurt? We have no idea. We will see a gazillion NFL players in this game. It's probably going to come down to 1 or 2 plays. I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole if I was a gambler. To be honest, I would stay away from it. There's too many question marks in an opening game, but it ought to be a lot of fun. I don't even know who's going to start for Notre Dame at quarterback yet. I'm not sure Marcus Freeman knows, to be honest with you either.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. Well, and hey, going back to Clemson, if they beat LSU week 1, you ask Dabo Swinney, they're just going to keep on winning. 1 down, 15 more to go. Dabo has made a bullish prediction for the 2025 Clemson Tigers. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On ACC. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We're joined by Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles and the Portal here on Locked On ACC. All right, so talk about confidence in his roster, Brian. Dabo Swinney said to ESPN's Chris Lowe this week, quote, "I've had one undefeated team. In 2018, we were the first 15-0 team in the history of major college football ever. And I think we're going to be the first 16-0 team. It's a race to do that, Dabo said. Now, I'm going to say this on the squad, which is coming out tomorrow. We're going to have a bunch of our hosts together. We're going to talk about these comments. Now, listen, I have no problem with Dabo saying it. He's trying to, speak truth to power with his roster. He believes in his kids. If we're actually going to look at this realistically, though, Brian, even if Clemson, who are understandably the favorites to win the ACC, even if they do that, they run the table 12-0, win the ACC championship 13-0. Even then, I'm not convinced that Clemson is beating the likes of your Georgias, your Ohio States, your Texases, who knocked them off last year in dominant fashion in the college football playoff. I mean, going 13-0 is one thing. Winning those next three is a whole nother thing.
That's where I'm more concerned. Would I be shocked if Clemson went 10-2 or 11-1, ended up with the number 3 seed or number 4? No. Do they have the depth and the overall talent to win games against teams like the ones you just mentioned? I think there are 5 or 6 teams that are a little bit different in terms of how they're built. There's so many new quarterbacks. We'll figure out which ones are best based on that after the season starts. But Clemson's depth in the deep secondary at running back, they just moved a wide receiver to running back.
Yeah,
that blew my mind. With the success they've had at running back at Clemson, that makes no success or makes no sense with how they would do that. But whatever, they do their own thing. But they are good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Very good. A lot of experience, guys sticking around. Now, can they weather the storm with having some luck with injuries? Because I don't think they can beat the Ohio States, Penn States, Texases in that kind of situation late in the year when attrition, I hate saying it this way, but the longer the seasons go, the shorter the list of teams that can win it really get, because it's about high school recruiting and depth. Does Clemson have that? I think their starters are as good as about anybody, but those last 3-4 games, It's about true depth. And they got a few guys on their depth chart. I'm like, I don't know if they're going to do real well against like Texas, for instance. So I don't think they're going to win it, but they'll be really good. And I think they'll be in any game, but I don't think they're quite to that tier.
Yeah, that's just my question, because obviously they return most of their talent from last year, highest percentage in the country, in fact, which is great for continuity. And you expect the players to come back, to a lot of them to be a little bit better than they were last year. But the team is not dramatically different to the point where, we all watched them get blown out against Georgia week 1 last year. We saw them lose to South Carolina at home, and we saw them get, thoroughly dominated by Texas. So have they actually closed the gap with those teams would be my question. Now, go ahead.
The depth again.
Yeah.
Those teams have more depth. Like that's why I don't see it. So I hope I'm right. It's cool when there's something like this that changes, but in college football, it usually kind of stays the same.
Yeah, and on like a bigger picture note outside of the ACC, coaches poll came out earlier this week, Brian, and they got the top 2. Maybe they got the right top 2, but did they get the right order? Because the coaches actually ranked Texas ahead of Ohio State, which actually is the first time Texas, believe it or not, first time they've ever been ranked a preseason number 1 in either the coaches or AP poll. Yeah. JJ Jackson from Locked On Blue Devils dropped that one on my head. I'm like, wow, really? So, but do you think like Texas, are they actually better than Ohio State in your mind preseason?
That is a great question. They've got a little more continuity with their staff. But Jeremiah Smith still resides in Columbus, but right. that's always the X factor. O-line coach change in Columbus, and both coordinators. And Jim Knowles left. Chip Kelly, I don't know how you rank Ohio State. The talent is insane. Matter of fact, I think they're the odds-on favorite by most of the sports books in Vegas. Yeah. But I don't know. The continuity would concern me. I don't know how you rank it. Arch hasn't played much. The guy for Ohio State hadn't played much. Like, this is a rare year. Out of the teams you normally think can win it, almost all of them are breaking in a new quarterback, except for Penn State. And do you trust Drew Allard? Yeah. Some do, some maybe not so much. So it's really hard.
And Penn State, they've had an unbelievable offseason, and that's come after a really good season last year. They got to the national semifinal. I know they tried to bolster their wide receiver core. They go out and, steal Trevor Pena from the ACC. They took him off the Syracuse roster. I mean, and I think Penn State is ranked third, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, are you buying them? Because I can't unsee what I saw from Drew Aller, who really choked away that Notre Dame game last year. Like, I can't unsee that. Like, are you buying Penn State as, a legit, national title potential winner?
I think the only two questions are the one you just mentioned. Can Drew play big in big games? And then can James Franklin make the right call? Him and a guy that you also follow very closely are in the same boat. Yeah. They got to win a game. They got to win a big game with a coaching decision. Of course, I'm talking about Mario Cristobal.
Sure.
Because they do everything else really well. I don't feel warm and fuzzy like James Franklin just never wins big games. I think they'll end up in the Final Four to Final 8 again, but I'm not betting against them against Texas or Ohio State or maybe against Clemson. I would probably take Penn State.
So would I. Yeah.
But like there's 3 or 4 schools I still like better because I just like the coach that's on the other sideline better. So prove me wrong. But Drew Aller, he did not complete a pass to a wide receiver last year. That is still one of the most crazy stats that I've ever seen in the Notre Dame game. Like that is insane. That is insane. So they've improved that room. Got Kyron Hudson, they got Pena, but they still got to prove it in the big games now. They got to find a way to get that done. That's terrible not to have a receiver with a reception.
Well, tremendous stuff as always here from Brian Smith. You want to check him out on X at FBScout_Florida, at LO_the Portal. That's for the Portal podcast that he hosts on the Locked On Network, which is excellent. Also check him out on Locked On Seminoles. Check me out on Locked On Canes and follow me at Alex Donno on X. And Kenton's going to be back next time. By the way, Kenton is, I think he's in an airplane right now. So we'll catch up with him at the end of the week. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.